ADHD is short for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. It's a mental health disorder that causes extreme levels of hyperactivity, impulsive behaviours and focus issues, and affects adults and children. For children, ADHD is generally associated with the problems they have at school. Often it's found that children with ADHD will find it more challenging succeeding in a controlled classroom setting. 1 out of 10 children between the ages of 5 to 17 years of age are diagnosed with ADHD, making it the most common childhood neurodevelopmental disorder in the USA, UK, and Australia. According to research by a Michigan State University economist, 20% out of the 4.5 million kids that are diagnosed with the disorder have most likely been misdiagnosed. The most common prescription medication to treat ADHD is Adderall, Vyvanse, and Ritalin. All these drugs are classified as amphetamines and, if abused, are highly addictive. Some of the long-term side effects of ADHD medications include heart disease, high blood pressure, seizures, and skin discoloration. Over the past few weeks, we have taken a deeper look into the effects this disorder has on our society and the future generation.
I'm Emily Baragry. I'm 28 years old and I have 3 children. So 2 of my children have ADHD. I've always been aware of it, as my brother had it growing up. He's always had it, but I was always aware of it. I didn't notice my children had it probably until they started school. So my youngest, it was quite obvious quite young, so I find he struggled with it quite severely compared to my older son. So he was probably about 3 when I started to notice different behaviours that were starting to show, whereas Jack didn't start to show signs of it until he started school. So Jack, when I first medicated him, I didn't want to. I did look into natural ways, but I didn't have enough information to try to do it. A lot of people said just try it, see if it helps with his grades and his schooling, and if it does, then great, but if it doesn't, you can take him off the medication. Yeah. So that's when I decided just to see if it did make a difference, and he went from reading almost like a prep level reader in year 3 up to where he needed to be and above within about 3 weeks. Jack was 8 when he first started the medication, and Levi was 6 when he started the medication. Jack's on Ritalin, the short release one, so he has one at 8 a.m. and then one at 12 p.m. and Levi's also on the same. However, we have tried different ones in the past. So Jack has had Concerta. I found when he was on Concerta though, he become quite, I don't know the word to use. He was very angry, very tired. He didn't want to engage with things. With his schoolwork, he wasn't wanting to try. He kind of would just give up. So we went back to the short-acting Ritalin, and we find that works quite well with Jack. And Levi, he's on the short-acting Ritalin as well. We did swap to the long, slow-released one that goes for the whole day, but he refused to take the tablet, so we had to go back to the short-acting. I think a lot of people perceive them as being quite naughty because they don't quite understand what comes with the ADHD side of things. A lot of parents, it's really hard to make that decision on behalf of your child without kind of asking them. It's a big choice because you don't know how it's going to affect your child, and it can be quite emotional for a parent to come to that decision on if they're going to medicate or not.
My My name is Ker Fox and I'm a clinical psychologist. So my specialty and my focus are in both research. I'm a researcher. I'm doing my PhD in trauma recovery. I've been doing this for about four years now. So ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. Okay? It is not a disease. It is not genetic. It is developed as a response. It's really a child's defense mechanism in response to a stressful environment when the infant brain is developing. Children need to be at least 6 years old before they would go on to medication. It's generally around 6 years of age where they are diagnosed and it sort of comes to light that there may be an issue here. So 3 main sort of types of medications for ADHD, so Vyvanse, Ritalin and Concerta. The main difference between them all is the release. So for Concerta, for example, is a slow release, that's released throughout the day. Ritalin is something that you take regularly throughout the day, and it's a fast-acting drug, so it will work quickly in the body, whereas Vyvanse, again, is a slower release. I think many parents are just so frustrated with their child's behaviour. Teachers are not coping with the escalation of children's poor behaviour, their impulse control, their hyperactivity or their disassociation. So they send them off to see us or doctors in hope of getting their child some hope, really.
There's not a single test that can tell if you or your child have ADHD. This can make things extremely hard when deciding whether or not to medicate your child. Parents aren't given a handbook on what to do from the get-go. It's challenging to always know what the best thing to do for your child is.
Well, I grew up and school was always very difficult for me because of the learning difficulty ADHD. But I never knew I had it until grade 11. Then I was diagnosed with it because one of my friends had ADHD as well. And it's commonly known that people with ADHD group together because they have the same similarities and the same traits. So he ended up pointing it out to me, saying, I think you should go get tested. I'd been told numerous times throughout my life by teachers to go get tested for ADHD, but there's a big stigma around ADHD and how it's viewed, that when my parents or whenever anyone would hear that I'd been told to go get tested for ADHD, they would react negatively towards the school or towards me, because then it's looked upon that you suffer from mental conditions and you can't think or concentrate normally. I was properly diagnosed about a year and a half ago now, but I'd been told since grade 4 to go get tested for ADHD. But to begin with, I was given 30 milligrams Vyvanse, and straight away the psychiatrist said, that's not going to be enough for my height and weight, but you got to ease onto it. After the first day, I felt alright until about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I started getting the worst anxiety. I was shaky the whole day. I actually had to go home from school, and I called him and I said, I don't know what's happening, and it's because there's a thing called a Vyvanse crash, and that's what people don't know about, and that's what happened to me then. So then straight away I was put onto 50s, and then the week later I was prescribed the 70 milligram Vyvanse, which is the highest prescribable dosage, and I was taking that for 3 months, and then they swapped me to Concerta, the highest dosage prescribable for that as well. And I was on a cycle of swapping between Ritalin, Concerta and Vyvanse. A lot of the people around me even saw this. When I started actually taking the medication, instantly my ADHD got worse, and it's because in a way you have an excuse to now act out, because beforehand, up until grade 11, I had been told that I was just, I had a bad way of thinking and I was just kind of dumb. And then when I found out I had ADHD, it kind of becomes like an excuse, like, oh, all of the bad characteristics I had, I can do them anyway because I've got ADHD, so it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I can go call out stuff to the teachers, I can be annoying in class, and it doesn't really matter because I've got ADHD. And I think that's one of the big things, is that the medication basically just works in the way of a band-aid, where you have a problem, you take a pill to fix that problem without actually addressing any of the issues of the problem. The other bad side effect, and it all links together, was it really messed up my sleeping habits. I went through a phase where I was sleeping at 10 o'clock in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, and that would be my whole sleep, and I'd be awake for the rest of the day and the rest of the night because of the medication I was on. And I was always questioning, like, why is my sleep habit so bad? Why is this happening? Like, I didn't like being up all night, like no one would. I stopped taking that medication and started trusting myself, and instantly my sleeping went back to normal, everything went back to normal, my anxiety eased instantly. I went away, I focused on myself for 2 months, and then after that, my life's been completely different because I stopped running from the problems that I had in my head, which is what people with ADHD do. And I focus on what I want to focus on, and that's the biggest part, is kids with ADHD who take that medication, as I said before, you lose that creativity and you're forced to focus on something that was just never meant for you. People see you acting a little bit differently, and it's actually how that's just normal for kids with ADHD. And then because of that, constantly calling out, acting weirdly, doing weird things, having weird traits as a human, just acting differently, acting in a way that you don't care what other people think, basically. And because of that, you're told that because you're different, you have brain problems and you'll never be normal. And kids grow up and they believe that for their whole life, and that's where a lot of kids don't understand. Having ADHD is actually a secret gift. You have so much potential because you can go against the crowd and you can be yourself. And then the people who go against the crowd and be themselves are the people who make the biggest changes in the world. You know what I mean? What's stopping the kid from focusing? That should be one of the questions that's asked, instead of just, oh, he's got mental problems, medicate him. What you're doing isn't a little effect on a kid's life. And I can say, like, people talk about how, like, there's an argument over, oh, alcohol's a gateway drug or marijuana's a gateway drug. There's that whole argument, but there's no argument about the fact that if you're prescribed ADHD medication from when you're 6 years old, that's the biggest gateway drug you could ever use.
Albert Einstein once said, "Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid."